This week at the United Nations, Pakistan faced a humiliating diplomatic blowback after attempting to legitimize cross-border terrorism as a so-called freedom struggle. India delivered a sharp and uncompromising rebuttal, exposing Islamabad's decade-long tactic of using terror as a state policy while preaching victimhood on global platforms. On Newsweek South Asia, we break down how Pakistan's narrative collapsed at the UN, why its doublespeak has lost credibility, and how India is reshaping the global counterterrorism discourse with facts, clarity, and intent.
I reiterate that the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir was, is, and will always remain an integral part of India. And the only unresolved issue is the vacation by Pakistan of illegally occupied parts of Indian territory of Jammu and Kashmir.
At the United Nations, India delivered a stinging rebuttal as Islamabad tried to whitewash its decades-long terror enterprise by masquerading jihadi proxies as so-called freedom fighters. The confrontation unfolded during an interactive dialogue with the UN Special Rapporteur on Fundamental Freedoms in Counter-Terrorism. Pakistan's representative, Mohammad Jawad Ajmal, urged the UN to distinguish terrorism from freedom struggles, essentially demanding legitimacy for Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. But that narrative collapsed instantly. India's first secretary to the UN mission, Raghu Puri, delivered a direct, hard-hitting expose, tearing apart Pakistan's excuses and labeling it the epicenter of global terrorism.
Terrorism is among the gravest offenses that fundamentally violates the core of humanity. It represents the worst of bigotry, violence, intolerance, and fear. Terrorists are the worst of the worst in humankind, and my country has borne the brunt of this devastation caused to lives, families, and societies as a result of cross-border terrorism that has been afflicted upon us for decades now. Terrorism, in fact, represents the biggest threat to the enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms, and it is important that we condemn it in all forms and manifestations. It's a shared threat that can be addressed only through deeper international cooperation. Chair, my delegation condemns yet another futile attempt by a member state to misuse this platform to propagate misinformation and disinformation. The international community stands witness to Pakistan's sponsorship of cross-border terrorism and its use of terrorism as a tool of state policy directed against India.
Pakistan attempted to twist international law by falsely claiming that UN endorses violent movements as freedom struggles. But the record is clear. UN resolutions from 1991 to 1994 to 2004 categorically state that no political or ideological motive can justify acts of terror. Yet Pakistan continues to shelter Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and Hizbul Mujahideen, terrorist groups responsible for massacres from Mumbai to Kashmir. For years, Islamabad has tried to block the global counter-terror framework, only to protect its favorite proxies. When exposed on terrorism, Islamabad played its next card, human rights. Pakistan accused India of violating the rights of those attacking the country. But New Delhi hit back, reminding the UN that the worst human rights violator in South Asia is not India, it is Pakistan itself. From the genocide in 1971 to the persecution of Hindus, Christians and Ahmadis to the slaughter of Pashtuns and Baloch civilians, Pakistan's record is drenched in blood, not credibility.
This country has normalized dehumanizing its ethnic and religious minorities, its genocide of its own civilians in 71 in erstwhile East Pakistan, its interference in Afghanistan leading to displacement and killing of people, and its use of terrorism as state policy exposes its duplicity and futile attempts to take cover of Islamophobia to hide its atrocities. Pakistan's decade-old institutionalized persecution of Hindu, Christian, and Ahmadiyya minority communities with impunity in the name of religion continues unabated and is yet another example of its double standards.
The UN debate also came days after India demonstrated decisive action against Pakistan-based terror infrastructure. Operation Sindoor, launched after the Pahalgam massacre that killed 26 civilians in Jammu and Kashmir, neutralized 9 major terror bases in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. These camps served as training hubs for LET, JEM and Hizbul, the very outfits Pakistan calls freedom fighters. India's response was measured, legitimate and non-escalatory, a stark contrast to Pakistan, which retaliated by deliberately shelling civilian areas across the border.
The brutal targeted attacks carried out by Pakistani trade terrorists, which claimed the lives of 26 innocent civilians in Pahalgam on 22nd April 2025, have not been forgotten by the world. India's legitimate right to defend itself was measured and non-escalatory in order to protect our people against terrorism and bring the organizers and perpetrators to justice, as was articulated in the UN Security Council's press statement that was released condemning this very attack. In contrast, Pakistan deliberately targeted our borders, villages, resulting in civilian deaths, including that of children. Pakistan must look itself in the mirror, stop preaching sermons at this forum, and act to protect children within its own borders and stop targeting women and children across the borders.
From Geneva to POJK, Pakistan's pattern is now unmistakable. Create terrorists, deny responsibility, play the victim, and then cry Islamophobia when caught. But India's message at the UN was unambiguous. The world can no longer allow Pakistan to hide behind propaganda, religion, or falsified narratives.
Pakistan's decade-old institutionalized persecution of Hindu, Christian, and Ahmadiyya minority communities with impunity in the name of religion continues unabated and is yet another example of its double standards.